Would find your seats there. All right, we want to welcome everyone here to our very first interim meeting of 2024 of Veterans, Military Affairs, and Public Protection. We want to welcome all of our members and our staff and everyone that makes this happen. We have two new members. I tell you what, one is not here yet, but he texted me he's on the way. So I'm going to hold off on those introductions just for a sec. But Courtney, we're glad to have you. Courtney Gilbert is, do you want to say just something or why you picked VMAP to green button? She knows.
I just want to say that I'm glad to be here, and I want to just say hello to all of my fellow colleagues and happy to work with you all this summer.
All right. Well, we want to welcome you. And Representative Grossberg is, did he make it? Oh.
No. This fellow here.
Uh-huh. Oh, is Gary new?
No, he's not new. He's
Steve.
Old. It's his birthday today, and he's 86, I think.
Oh, my goodness. Well, happy birthday, my friend. You trying to dodge that, huh? He's like, all right. Well, what we're going to do, I will let Representative Grossberg speak just a sec when he gets here. He's a new member also. He said he's on his way, but just running a few minutes late. We're going to go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing as Brother Fugit leads us in prayer.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for the safety you gave us driving up this morning. And Lord, thank you for this committee, and thank you for all those that serve on this committee. We thank you for our great country. We thank you for our military, those who serve across the seas here in the States, our first responders, and all those that keep us safe. And Lord, may we make good decisions for them and to make their lives better here in the state of Kentucky. May we honor and glorify you, most of all, with all of our decisions. Give us your wisdom, and we'll thank you for it. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for reminding me. I'm out of practice. All right, I'm jumping all over the place, and we have not taken roll yet. So, Mr. Secretary, please take roll. Let's see who all's here.
Senator Berg, Senator Boswell, Senator Deneen, Senator Harper Angel, Senator Higdon, Senator Meredith, Senator Smith, Senator Westerfield, Senator Williams, Senator Wilson, Representative Blanton,
Present.
Representative Bratcher, Representative Dietz, Representative Dossett,
Present.
Representative Freeland,
Present.
Representative Fugit,
Here.
Representative Gilbert, Representative Gooch,
Present.
Representative Grossberg, Representative Hart,
Here.
Representative Johnson,
Here.
Representative Cook, Representative Lewis,
Here.
Representative Maddox, Representative Massaroni,
Here.
Representative Proctor, Representative Raymer, Representative Sharp,
Present.
Representative Stalker,
Present.
Representative Stevenson,
Present.
Representative Tackett Lafferty,
Here.
Representative Wesley,
Here.
Co-Chair Girdler,
Here.
Co-Chair Thomas.
Present. Looks like we got a pretty strong quorum there, so we really do appreciate everyone being here today. I tell you what, today is a very special day, Juneteenth, and we commemorate the emancipation of the last enslaved individuals of the U.S. So I have asked, Colonel Representative Duchess Stevenson to give us just a little background on it, maybe about 5 minutes or so, and then we have a distinguished guest that we want to honor too. So the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you so much. This is really exciting. And notice he said little to a politician, a preacher, and a lawyer. But I will keep it little because this is a good news story. It points to the strength of America. If you think about it, when the President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, and the states decided they wouldn't follow it. America lived up to its creed that all people are created equal, that we are endowed by certain inalienable rights. And they rode around this country telling slaves, you're free. And then 2 years after he signed it, they reached the last spot, which was Galveston, Texas. And the general rode into people who were slaves who had nothing. They had no money, no clothes, no property, didn't even know how to spell free. And he said, you're free. Now, here's the good news. If we are brave enough to embrace that the strength of our country is in this instance, that the country said, we will live up to our creed and we will travel until every slave knows they're free, because no human can own another human. And that these people who had nothing showed the character of America by marching into the future and building historically Black colleges, building Black churches, building Black Wall Street with nothing. That's who we are. That's what we celebrate. It is not a or them, us or them. It is a country who can acknowledge what is done not right, correct it, heal, and then go to the next level of liberty and justice for all. Celebrate Juneteenth any number of ways. Eat a lot, cake, ribs, because we're talking to the South, and the South is known for ribs. But most of all, look to see how you live the principles that allowed the people back then to say, we don't agree with everything we say. I've been married 41 years, and my husband agrees with me all the time. But they didn't agree, but they lived for something bigger than self, and that was the promise of America. And they were willing to give up their opinions. They were willing to love one another. They were willing to do whatever it takes so that this great union could exist. That's who we are. Celebrate Juneteenth, knowing you're part of a people that stood for you, and we get to stand for people that are not yet born. Did I just dance in a committee meeting? Okay. And on that note, I'd ask each of you to look at how you can celebrate Juneteenth if it's nothing more than reading the Emancipation Proclamation. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Stevenson. All right, and real quick, Representative Wesley, you had a guest that you want to introduce.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have today beside me is a young boy, 14 years old, I believe, goes to Owsley County High School. His name is Noah Schaus, and his wonderful mother here with us in the audience, Miss Wilder. So we just make them feel welcome today. We thank you.
All right. Well, at this time, we'll kind of get back on schedule there and invite our distinguished soldier up. If he would come on up to the floor there, and Vice Chair Sharp is going to kind of probably read all the good stuff that he probably doesn't tell a lot of people. So let's go ahead and hear what you have to say there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Committee. I am Representative Sharp from the 100th District out in Ashland, the great 100th District, the only three-digit district in the Commonwealth. And for my compatriot, Air Force compatriot, Colonel, I just want to say I'm celebrating Juneteenth by making sure everyone knows it was a U.S. Army cavalry unit that went in and did that. Yes, I noticed. That's why I'm pointing it out. But on to other things. Sitting next to me, I've got Sergeant Major Timothy F. 9, and he is a military policeman. He is the Command Sergeant Major for the 198th Military Police Battalion in Louisville, which is part of the Kentucky Army National Guard. Now, as someone that is a former military policeman, I remember reading about his activities when I was on active duty, and I was like, man, I got to meet this guy someday, him and his team, because what they did over in the sandbox is absolutely outstanding. And I'm going to let him talk to it about it. There's a couple of videos on YouTube you can watch and see what he did. And this is exactly what the military police were trained to do to support combat operations. And I'm very happy to be here, Sergeant Major. And with that, I'm going to let you talk to the panel. Tell them a little bit about your background.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Sergeant Major Tim Nine from the 198th Military Police Battalion. As he said, I have the distinct pleasure right now of representing 695 soldiers geographically dispersed across Kentucky. Our job is to service the people of Kentucky and provide law enforcement augmentation during emergencies and other disasters, or when the governor decides that we need to go help. It's one of the best jobs I could ever have in the Army, and being a military policeman as well has just been the greatest thing ever. I work full-time. I'm part of your full-time staff for the Kentucky National Guard. And back in 2005, I'll take you back to on 20 March, it was the second anniversary of our liberation of Iraq. And that's one of the greatest things about talking today. We're talking about June 19th for liberation of people. Well, that's what we were there to do. And on that particular day, 50 anti-Iraqi forces set up a small ambush, actually a little bit larger ambush, to be able to stop coalition forces from their freedom of movement throughout the area. On that particular day, I was a staff sergeant. I led a group of 9 military police soldiers and 1 medic, women and men, to counter this ambush. And at the end, 35 were either killed or captured of enemy forces, and 15 were driven off because they thought we were a larger force than what we were. Just normal, everyday Kentucky citizens outperforming operations globally, doing great things. Even the better part of it, not one coalition soldier was killed in the entire operation. So it's a tribute to what the citizens of Kentucky pay for and what we're able to do, not just here, but globally. Right now, I can honestly say that since February 2nd of 2001, there's only been 2 years and almost 24 years now, 2 years that a unit from our battalion has not been deployed somewhere. So we're consistently up, moving and going, training and preparing to be able to service the people of Kentucky and the citizens of the United States. So, sir?
Well, the Sergeant Major's been deployed to places not only in the Middle East, but he's been to Ecuador, Panama, Bosnia, Herzegovina, as well as the southern border in Texas. He's done a lot. And how many people were on your team that day that you went into in Iraq?
There were 10 total.
10 total?
Myself.
Okay. And how many awards out of that?
Myself, I was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. Sergeant Leanne Hester was the first female to be awarded the Silver Star for combat action against the enemy force. Sergeant Jason Mike, our medic, was awarded the Silver Star as well. And the remaining unit received Bronze Stars with Valor, or ARCOMs with V with Valor, and 5 Purple Hearts were awarded from that one action that day.
Now, my understanding is you actually went into the trench and started clearing the trench.
Absolutely. Sergeant Leanne Hester and I, when it came to a point where we believed, at least I believed, that we were about to be overrun by the force that I had committed ourselves to, went into a canal system to close the fight and finish the day off against at least 5 different combatants at ranges no farther than 20 yards.
Okay, and my understanding is you were traveling in a stack. She was shooting over your shoulder.
Yeah, yes.
That happened. How's your hearing?
Actually, it's ironic where your your auditory shuts down and you can hear normal conversations, but even with a muzzle, and I tell this story and I can still feel the heat and the overpressure coming out of her barrel as she shot over my shoulder as we continue to fight our way down the trench, throwing grenades and shooting our rifles.
When I read about that, it's just amazing. He's had a lot of the military police corps has acknowledged what he has done. He's had a lot of accolades for that, and I'm one that I'm just happy you're here. I'm happy I'm the one that gets to introduce you as a former MP, and I think this is awesome. And his wife is here. Is that Raina?
Renee.
Renee. Renee is here, and she doesn't want to come up front, but I just want to acknowledge that because as far as the military, you know, it's not just a soldier. He's got a family team that's got to support him, and I'm sure she's had to put up with him deploying to all these places and taking care of everything on the home front. So she needs to be recognized also, and because she's put up with a lot and had to take care of a lot while he was out protecting the Commonwealth and protecting the nation. So with that, I want to congratulate you.
Thank you very much, sir.
And I've got a coin for you.
And I have one for you as well. I'm sorry, let me switch hands there.
Okay.
Appreciate it, sir.
Yes,
Thank
sir,
you.
Sergeant Major. Is there any questions from the committee?
Any members have any questions? We really appreciate what you've done, and of course it was mentioned that the Distinguished Service Cross that is that you received is actually one below the Medal of Honor. So that's awesome. So Representative Johnson.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say, Sergeant Major, your actions and the actions of your team are in the finest traditions of our military and the Kentucky Guard, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, sir.
He's also airborne. So, anyway.
All right.
One for you. If you have anything, please let me know.
Yes, sir. I will. Very nice. You know, like I said, I read about that whole thing. It's being a former division EMP, that's exactly what we're supposed to do.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for being here. And ma'am, we do appreciate everything you do. My daughter's married to military, and she went military herself for a little bit, but it's a lot taking care of the home front there. So we appreciate it. All right, we are going to. Oh wait, Representative Grossberg, we got to embarrass you. We want to welcome you to our committee. Give you a second or two if you'd like to say anything, or why you chose VMAP, or it chose you, or the floor is yours for a sec.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Apologies for being late today. It's embarrassing to be late on your first day at school. I am honored to be on this committee. I know that this is one of the most influential committees in the General Assembly. I don't know whether or not I will have the opportunity to serve on it next term, but I am truly honored to be here in the interim, taking the place of Minority Whip Rachel Roberts, who is presently on the beach in Mexico, making me very jealous, but is retiring and therefore has created an extra spot for us on this committee. And for those who don't know, I served in the U.S. Army, not with any distinction close to the sergeant major, but these topics are near and dear to my heart.
Well, we are sure glad to have you there, sir. All righty, at this time, let's go ahead and start our agenda. Let's have Hannah Rivera and Megan Stith, if y'all would take the, and it looks like we do have slides, yeah. All right, please introduce yourselves for the record. We have it in front of us, but please, to get it on the public record, that'd be great. And y'all probably know the routine, the little green buttons there to make sure the mic goes on and off. Let me fix this.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having us. It's always a pleasure to talk about KCTCS, but to be here and talk about this population is especially an honor, and what a tough act to follow. I am Hannah Rivera. I'm VP of External Affairs for KCTCS.
And I am Megan Stith. I am the Vice President of Advancement for Elizabethtown Community and Technical College right near Fort Knox.
And President Quarles sends his regards. He could not be here today, but he wanted to say hello to everyone. So we like to start out when we talk about our system of community colleges, just giving a lay of the land. We are 16 colleges with over 70 campuses stretching from Paducah to Pikeville. We have a system office located in Versailles, which is where I am, and each of our colleges are singly accredited, which allows them to operate in a way that they can respond to the needs of their communities and be flexible and responsive to those who they serve. So over the last 3 years, KCTCS has enrolled an average of over 6,500 students each year with military connections. You can see from the breakdown that that's about 960 active duty members each year, 1,600 veterans, and almost 4,000 military connected students. I don't math, but that's about over close to 18,000 students over the last 3 years that have been served through our colleges. And here's some really good news. We have seen a steady increase in each of these groups over the last 3 years. You can see that our military connected students are up 37.6%, veterans up 20%, and our active duty students are up 13.9%. And you're probably wondering, well, what are we doing to get those numbers up? We'll share a little bit about that in the presentation later. But I do want to say that we have taken very intentional steps to focus on this subpopulation, not just because it's the right thing to do, because our veterans deserve these extra wraparound services and support that we can offer, but at KCTCS, we see everything through the lens of workforce, and we know that Kentucky's workforce will have to have every able-bodied member participating in it for us to be successful in the Commonwealth. So that's why we're really focusing in on different groups of populations, not just veterans, but incarcerated, those who have been out of the workforce for a while, who have some credential but no degree, to get them back into our colleges and then out into the workforce to be participating. So I want to give just a few more stats. We have Megan here, of course, who is with E-Town. We also have Hopkinsville Community College. They are very involved in their area, of course. And so Hopkinsville enrolls over twice as many active duty military students as any other KCTCS college. That was nearly 400 students this year. And then Elizabethtown has the highest number of veterans enrolled with 285. There's a trend in higher education, one that I think is a great trend, to not just talk about enrollment, but talk about earning a credential, because we all know that enrollment is just the first step. So we can say that we've had this many students that are military connected enroll, but the important part is that we have awarded over 3,486 credentials annually to students with military connections. And what our data shows is that the military connected students actually outperform any of our other student subpopulations in earning that credential. And that's probably no surprise. We know that our military connected students are very dedicated to what they're doing. So when we say credential, that means that they can either get a certificate that sometimes takes as little as 6 weeks. Think about your CDL certificate. They can also get a diploma that usually takes a year to 2 years, and then they can get an associate's degree, which is 2 years. They can use that to go straight into the workforce, or they can transfer to one of our 4-year partners. We'd be remiss to not say thank you to this body. There is a tuition waiver that is provided by the Commonwealth of Kentucky to those in recognition of military service. The tuition waiver is provided for children, stepchildren, spouses, and unremarried widows and widowers of those who have served. So thank you to this body for providing those funds. At the system office, we have a director with the Kentucky State Approving Agency for Veterans Education. This colleague works directly for the state agency on things like the GI Bill approval. And then each of our colleges have a veteran certifying official called SCOs who work with our military enrolled students. And I would also want to mention that President Quarles just recently brought on former Secretary Derek Ramsey, who is now in our system office, and he's specifically working with our veteran population and seeing how we can maximize our best practices across the state to focus on this group of students. So I showed you those numbers earlier about how our students in these military-connected populations are increasing. We have recently focused on credit for prior learning, which we call CPL, for military training and education. Our registrars now can take a ACE database for military connected students and compare it to their joint service transcript and see what overlaps, so that our military connected students can get credit for what they've done during their service, and that can put them ahead in their education. We've also identified and developed several accelerated pathways to licensed civilian occupations for veterans who serve in targeted military operations. So think about if you were a nurse in the field, how does what you did in service compare to what you would be trained for at one of our institutions? We can give you credit for that and put you into an accelerated pathway into a career. We're also working very closely with our partners at the Kentucky Chamber. They started a military hiring academy, and we have participated in that. So I do have the website up. If you are a military-connected student, you may wonder what it looks like to visit the KCTCS website. I don't know if it shows on your screen. It's showing on ours. So I don't know how that projects, but we have a page dedicated solely to our military-connected students that really walks them hand in hand through the process of enrolling. It identifies a person at each one of our 16 colleges that they can reach out to individually and connect with them. So we're taking them step by step through the process, giving them a person that will walk them through the entire process of getting into a college and ensuring that they earn that credential. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Megan here, again from ECTC, who can talk about what they are doing at their college for outreach.
Well, I can't think of a much better day to be with you all than on a day where the theme is freedom and opportunity. And that is what ECTC is all about, and that our doors are open, as well as at KCTCS, to anyone who has a dream for a better life. It's our job to help remove the barriers that stand in the way of students and help them on their path to accomplishing their goals. We cannot do that alone, though, as you can imagine. Partnerships are so key to the work that we do as a college and as a system. And I'm going to share a little bit today about what we have done and where we are headed with the help of those partners. We have over 1,000 military-connected students at ECTC, which is tremendous. And that comes to us from a variety of different ways. We are grateful to have Fort Knox in our community. And although there is so much economic development happening now in Hardin County, we can't lose sight of the economic engine that is Fort Knox, with a nearly $5 billion annual economic impact. But we are a great place also for our military-connected individuals to stay after they retire. So a lot of our strategy at ECTC has been, how do we attract and retain military and veteran families to our community and help them get wherever it is that they would like to go on their journey. A few years ago, we worked with the Knox Regional Development Alliance to create a coding academy. Representative Bratcher knows that work all too well. He was key in that program. And really working with partners to identify the needs of the workforce, not only across the region, but specifically at Fort Knox. Sometimes we don't realize how high-tech these installations have become. They have significant needs in the IT space, for example. And the Coding Academy allowed us to provide industry-recognized credentials to students within a matter of weeks, so they could get into these high-paying, high-demand jobs. Previously, there were employees being flown in from across the country to fill that workforce gap, and we were able to address it through training that we customized at ECTC. We've also worked with Fort Knox to implement a career skills program in manufacturing. Again, because we know there is a workforce need, and we can't imagine a better, more talented employee than someone who has a prior military experience and the skills they have, both technical and in teamwork and leadership, and connecting them with the training they need at ECTC to help them transition and be successful in their next career out of the military. We also are grateful to partners like Abound Credit Union. They have allowed us to establish a Purple Heart Scholarship, a textbook lending program, because we know military families have so many different needs, along with all of our students. Their success in the classroom is often very dependent on a variety of factors. So we want to remove any barriers that stand in their way, and having the support of donors and partners allows us to address those issues and allow soldiers and students to keep moving forward. So as we look to the future, we are really excited about a comprehensive plan we are putting together to better serve the needs of Fort Knox. We have a Fort Knox Accelerate pilot program that will be launching later this year, and that will pair soldiers with a success coach who has experience in the industry of interest to that soldier. So for example, our real estate certificate will pair students with someone who's actually working in that field and has the connections to help them plug into that career. We are also excited to be working with USA Cares. They have a tremendous CSP or career skills program that we're looking to collaborate with, but are currently actually hosting one of their transitioning soldiers who's doing work at the college and seeing what it's like to work in higher ed and considering that as a career. So not only asking others to help us, but trying to open our doors to allow other military connected organizations to collaborate with us. We also have the opportunity and are planning to do more dual credit for our high school students who attend Fort Knox High School, and making sure that we are not only serving our veteran and military student, but their entire family. So we are offering some additional outreach and ensuring that we're talking to military spouses about credentials and careers that hopefully they will be able to pursue locally, but that also have a portability to them. So no matter where they end up in the future, they will have an educational certification that will take them in the path that is going to help them and their family in the long term. So we really see our role and recognize that ECTC is very uniquely positioned for this work, to be that convener, to bring the partners together that all have different strengths with that goal of serving our military and veteran students. So hopefully they can continue to remain in our community, we can fill those gaps in our workforce, and our local economy can continue to thrive. So we look forward to any questions you have. I know as we complete our presentation, certainly happy to address anything about ECTC that I can share with you today.
And I'll just wrap up by saying that the System Office in Versailles is actually hosting the 3rd Annual Veteran Employment and Training Symposium in November, and consider this your official invitation. We would absolutely love to have members of this committee there to participate. We could probably line up some speaking opportunities as well. So we hope to see you there in November, and happy to take any questions.
November's down the ways a little bit. Can you send us all, would you mind send that
Absolutely.
out probably to the whole General Assembly if you'd like, if you want
Absolutely.
some of us coming. Versailles is one of the shorter drives that we face from here.
Will do.
Well, we appreciate y'all being here. It looks like we do have a question. I did have one question too. I know in Christian County, there's a satellite school down on Fort Campbell Post itself. Does Elizabethtown, do y'all have a post on?
We do. We have a Fort Knox campus, and we offer in-person as well as online classes there, and have staff on site at Fort Knox to help soldiers navigate what the best path would be for them at ECTC. So we are actively involved on post.
Wonderful. I know that really helps. I think even when I was going to community college years ago, I took a couple classes on Fort Campbell just because sometimes they were more convenient. So, all right, we do have a question, Senator Boswell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, regarding the cost of the program, is there a difference between the cost of veterans? You mentioned veteran-connected families. So can you explain to us the cost as far as, is there a difference between the veteran and the family that's connected to the veteran?
So the tuition waiver that is provided by the General Assembly is available to the people I listed, and I'll have to go back and look at that. It is not only for the veteran, but also for their family. And so that waives the cost of tuition for them to attend any one of our 16 colleges.
And one more question. So for the veterans, did the U.S. government pick up part of this as some type of a okay, that's the question.
Yes.
I'm just asking a question just so I'll know. Whether the taxpayers of Kentucky bear the entire cost of this, or whether the federal government helps.
The federal government helps. Of course, they will have their GI Bill, but if for some reason that there were additional costs, then any cost that's not covered by their federal benefits, the state waives tuition for military and military-connected families at all of the public institutions.
All right, we have another question, Senator Deneen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say how much I appreciate both of you. I know you all are constantly at meetings and organizations, and you are very, very active. And to Ms. Stith, I know you've been a blessing to ECTC, to Dr. Pate, and to our soldiers that are transitioning from Fort Knox. I do have a question. Have you seen much of an uptick in soldiers that may be interested in certifications such as electricians, carpentry, advanced manufacturing, because of our plants that are all moving into Hardin County and the surrounding area? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. Yes, we have seen an increase in that interest. And I think a lot of that also comes down to the fact that we have a lot of military and veteran connections within our technical faculty. Our faculty really understand what it's like to have had this experience and are very flexible. So we've had, especially through that career skills program, soldiers that had to come in at different times, different stages of the semester, and we have worked with them every step of the way to make sure if they have that interest, we want to be flexible and responsive to their needs. So we anticipate that interest will grow as Blue Oval SK gets up and running, but we already the last few years have seen more interest in the manufacturing sector because there is such opportunity there. So we want to be the gateway that connects soldiers and military families to those opportunities.
Thank you very much. And I would just like to add that one of our current members here on this committee is also in our National Guard, Representative Steve Bratcher, and he is also working with ECTC. So thank you for your service as well, sir.
All right, I was just told, Megan, that if you hit the escape key on the laptop, you would be able to play that.
I need that IT certification
well,
that we were talking about.
And it wasn't coming from me. It was our younger generation here.
Great.
So.
That's not my skill in life.
Well, thank you very much. And there's no video. We just wanted to show you specifically the webpage that we have dedicated to our veterans. You can see that there's admissions checklist. It breaks down all of their educational benefits, which we mentioned earlier, including that tuition waiver, and it shows our accelerated pathways for them, as well as looking at what they may earn from their military experience. So again, we really do walk them hand in hand through the entire experience of enrolling and earning a credential.
Awesome. Well, we want to thank y'all for what you're doing for our vets, and the more we can get to stay in Kentucky, the better, because then they go on to join our National Guards and instead of other states. So we appreciate everything y'all do there. So, all right, no more questions. We will move on. We had last minute substitutes here, and we keep the sheriff in our prayers. I heard he's not feeling well or so, but we have Major Johnson and Tim Morrison, and I believe Representative Sharp is going to join y'all. Would y'all come down and please make sure the green lights are on. Introduce yourself for the record, sir.
My name is Major Johnson. I'm a Chief Deputy with the Boyd County Sheriff's Department. Been there 31 years.
I'm Tim Morrison. I'm a Safety Coordinator for Boyd County, and I'm here to represent our Sheriff's Department today and some of the needs we have.
And again, I'm Representative Sharp from the Great 100 District, and one of the things we want to talk about today is some safety issues that have come up in our law enforcement community and as far as our communications. Now, when I retired and came back to Kentucky, after 9/11, there was a big push to have interoperability throughout all the law enforcement and fire and all the first responders. And apparently that's not happening, and it's showing right in Boyd County right now. So with that, I'm going to let, I guess, Mr. Morrison here talk about the problems we're having with communications.
Well, a lot of the problem we have with communications is just the lack of keeping up with, everything we have is old. We've done some studies on what it's going to take to fix these problems, and right now across the county we have 3 towers for the communication. 2 of them are actually in Ashland, and only 1 tower that actually goes out is kind of midways of the county. So what we've been looking at, we've been working with Motorola, and they have decided we need to be able to cover the county is to add 2 towers. One is an existing tower that we can actually put repeaters on, and the other is one we're going to have to build. and then rebuild the other towers that we do have to be able to cover the coverage of the county that we need. And another thing that we're looking at, like I said, our handheld radios are over 15 years old. I actually had one go down this week. Deputy Johnson was telling me that when we was coming down, they sent it to get it repaired. They can't even get parts for them anymore. So we're looking at having to replace all the handheld radios. We're looking to have to replace there's no repeaters in any of the cars. So, I mean, you see guys go in the buildings or whatever, and they're holding the radios up trying to hold to get a signal. And I'm the type of coordinator that goes out with the guys. I do ride-alongs. So I see this problem. It's not something that I've been told is going on. It's something that I see on a regular basis. And just like last week, we had 2 officers in a foot pursuit. They were close together. They were in a rural area. They could not talk to each other.
And with that, I'd like Major Johnson to talk about some of the safety issues that have popped up during patrols.
We had one of our deputies working off-duty security at Malibu Jacks and was into an altercation with 2 subjects and could not get out on his radio to ask for backup. And while he's fighting 2 subjects, we had to have a bystander there call on the phone, call 911 to get another deputy out there to help him.
Now Malibu Jacks is an entertainment district in Boyd County. It's got, Malibu Jacks is there. You've got Camp Landing. It has a bunch of food and entertainment stuff. We've also got the horse track going in there and a gaming center. So it's going to be a big draw for a lot of people now and more so in the coming years. And we're having communications issues right there. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
Go ahead.
No, we're having these issues. It's like I said, I've been here 31 years, and the issue's been the whole time. We can't talk. We can't even talk outside half the places in the county. We have to hold the radio up about 3 feet above your head and try to holler at dispatch because we can't get out. We can't. If you get inside of a mobile home out in the county, you can forget it because you ain't going to get out. There's no way. And we don't have car repeaters to where we can talk to dispatch.
Now, if this is an issue that's happening in Boyd County, I'm sure it's happening in other counties, especially in eastern Kentucky because of the terrain. And I think this is something that, at some point in time we're going to have to address. I for the life of me, I don't understand why all that Homeland Security money didn't fix this, 10, 15 years ago when it was out there. But, this is something that we have to look at, I think, for the entire state to make sure that our law enforcement and fire and first responders can communicate at a bigger scale than just, a couple of feet. Do you have anything else, Mr. Morrison?
No.
All right. I'm going to let Mr. Morrison also talk about a program. It's called the Compass Program, and it's for mental health for first responders.
Yeah, we've been in contact with this Compass program. It's kind of a pilot program that they started over in Huntington, West Virginia, and it was set up to try to help other officers across the nation actually. And they've contacted us, and I have a few brochures or something to if anyone's interested in seeing what they offer on everything. But the thing is we have officers that they have a program that they are able to have they have their physical fitness like a coach. They have a physical fitness area. They have a mental health coach. They are able to debrief, and they embed themselves in with the officers, and they go out on like the ride-alongs and the things like that. They also interact with their families. And what this does is this gives them comfortable surroundings that they can be able to, if they do need help, that they can. Now, these people are not people that are certified, like people to talk to them, but they guide them to the right people. And it's a place for the officers to come. Everything's furnished, and I was hoping they could get someone here today, but they had some issues they couldn't make it. So. But it's a program that I really do like. because I would like to be able, because, our officers, they see a lot. And all the first responders see a lot. And a place where they could feel comfortable, they could go to get help, and it could be kind of embedded in their lives where they're looking at every day that they're able to go work out, go do this. And it's not a bodybuilding thing. They train them actually to, like, they have a certain machine that it's like where they carry their gun belt. An officer carries a lot of weight around his waist. They actually have a machine that they work out on that strengthens them in places. And in time, they have seen, less workers' compensation claims and different things, just because they're building them stronger. And as the generations, we think we don't need any help by any means, because, we're tough guys and all that. But, there is times that it would be nice to have someone just to vent to. And when you see your other guys coming in and venting a little bit, maybe they have private time together, and they've helped a lot of people in this program.
And as Mr. Morrison is saying, this program helps build not only physical fitness but mental fitness. And they've got a workout room where these counselors that are there to help them will come in and help them work out, talk to them while they're working out, and build trust. So if they start having issues, they feel safe going to these people. And I can speak to the law enforcement side of this, that law enforcement tends to have a very high divorce rate, because you can't go home and tell your spouse about some of the stuff that you just seen today. You don't want your spouse to know that. You don't want them to see that horror of that child or whatever it was. I don't want to go into detail. But typically is what happens then is they need to talk to somebody that has the same basic foundation of understanding of what they went through. So they like talking to other law enforcement people, and they like talking to people in that community and trust. What this program does is it kind of inserts itself into that community to help. And it seems to be a very good program. They're having very good results. I wish they could have been here today, because I know they could speak a lot more eloquently about it than I can. And we're open for questions, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you. I know Director Gibson from Urban Search and Rescue was supposed to be here today, but they had to move till maybe next month or so. We're still working on some details. So saying that, we funded them over the next couple of years, and part of that was the infrastructure of making sure everyone can talk to each other. So maybe Representative Sharp can ask some questions next month or so on y'all's behalf and see if there's something in the program that could pull Boyd County into it and all too. So hopefully that's good. We do have two questions, or they're adding. Senator Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the presentation. And I don't know that I actually expect you all to know the answer, but I did hear, I think we all heard this last week, an additional $1 billion coming into the state, federal money for internet infrastructure. Will that help your situation?
Well, as far as the internet itself, I think what we need now is the communication and with the towers. And like I said, I'm not an electronics person, so I don't know how that would. Right now, I know the everything's VHS and digital, and I don't know exactly how the internet would help with the unless we add the towers, and maybe there's a Wi-Fi system that could go from tower to tower. But I mean, we really need more towers, is what we've been told, and the repeaters to be able to talk. I guess it talks from the radio to the actual car, which has the stronger radio that pushes the signal out through the towers.
I think that depending on how it's set up, it could very easily help somewhat. But the bottom line is getting the officer on the ground with a handheld radio or his car radio to reach that tower. That seems to be the problem. And then however the tower is able to communicate it out, that may be very well done with the internet. It could be done through telephone lines. I'm not an expert in that area, but the issue we're having, correct me if I'm wrong, Major, is that officer on the ground with a radio can't talk to anybody, and the internet's not going to help with that.
All right, Senator Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was late for this meeting today because I had a county that had the exact same issue that you're having, and I was on the phone with Josh Keats at Homeland Security, the Director of Homeland Security, and he was telling me there are grants through Homeland Security for this very problem. So I don't know if you've reached out to Josh Keats, Director of Homeland Security. That would be a good place to start. They deal with this type of thing, and so that's exactly what I'm going to go back and tell my folks that contacted me is contact Josh Keats. And I don't know if y'all know Josh. He does a great job with Homeland Security, outstanding young man, and takes his job very, very, very seriously. So please reach out to him. He can be very helpful.
Sure will.
Senator Higdon, I agree that's one place to start, but I think the bigger issue that we probably as a committee need to look at is the interoperability, the communications at a larger scale. They should be able to talk to everybody around us. They should be able to, maybe we need to have a emergency frequency for the entire state so that if Boyd County can get online, they could talk to somebody in Paducah, and that's very easily done with the right equipment. What I'm kind of thinking of right now is maybe some sort of pilot project where the ad district gets on board, because right now in our county, the Catlettsburg, which is the county seat of the county, and the sheriff's office cannot communicate, and they're in the same town. And they can only do it by picking up the phone, calling dispatch.
Several years ago, we went through the same issue with 911, and we work with the fees, we work with the commission, and we moved the 911 board from where it was at to Homeland Security, and worked on the fees for that. If you have a cell phone, you're paying a fee that goes to 911, to help folks with their 911 in the state. That organization has put a lot of money back into the counties and cities and those different organizations, and getting them up to date. And probably in Boyd County, you all have worked with those folks at 911 with funding and so forth. So again, this very same issue that we're talking about today, we were talking about with 911, where they get a 911 call and couldn't figure out where the issue was. They couldn't find it on the map, and just all kinds of issues with 911. And we don't have those issues anymore. And as we move into next gen, there's been money set aside for that conversion. So it's a good. We already have a roadmap to follow what we did with E911. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we have a question, Representative Bratcher.
Thank you all for your service, and I agree that does make for a very dangerous situation. We can't communicate with other officers. I have to agree with Representative Sharp, though. We probably need to look at the bigger picture here, because as our guard unit, which was mobilized for the protests in downtown Louisville, the floods, the tornadoes, as well as some mine rescues, we couldn't communicate with our technical satellite encrypted radios with local law enforcement or with the local EMS. So we had some of our guys were carrying 3 and 4 radios to be able to communicate with everybody they needed to communicate with, helicopters to law enforcement to paramedics. So I think hopefully this search and rescue money that we've got allocated for next session or the next couple of years can look at this situation and try to do something for the statewide and come up with a method that we can use so when we do activate the National Guard, that we can all communicate together. So I appreciate you all being here today.
All right, Senator Boswell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this, I'm getting back to Boyd County. I'm not familiar with what you do there. I mean, is somebody failed to keep some of this communication? I mean, I know in our area we have a joint city, the city police and the sheriff department, we have joint 911, and we have in Davis County, we have funded our sheriff department pretty significantly, I think, to take care of communications issues. So I don't guess I understand exactly how you got here. Has there been a failure or somebody to properly fund this in Boyd County?
Well, I think that the problem that we've got is, of course, money's short everywhere, and anything that can be put off gets put off a little bit. But we recently have a new sheriff. He's been in place since the last election, and he has done wonders. I mean, we've got new equipment, we've got new cruisers. For some reason, we were just really down. I mean, in every department, all of our equipment is old, and as far as pinpointing why it's not, I can't put a pinpoint on that. I know that when the new sheriff, I was not as involved with the old sheriff just because I was not allowed to be, according to him, And the thing is, with the new sheriff, he wants his guys to have the up-to-date things. Like I said, we go through, I mean, we can make a list right down through the equipment, and it's all basically between 15 and 20 years old across the board.
I certainly see the problem that you're having. There's not questions at all about whether you have a problem.
Right.
I'm just concerned that, around the state, other people have stepped up to the plate, and it seems like there's been a failure somewhere there. Thank you.
And in the last, we've got all new commissioners, new judge, and all these people are willing to work with us. And like I said, it's time passed that I wasn't involved with them, so I can't give a pinpoint, but I do know that all the ones that are in place right now are willing to work with us, and so much money to go around, and we're doing what's most important first.
All right, Senator Williams.
Thank you. You mentioned the tower locations, and I know that we have NextGen 911, we have the FirstNet, we have the statewide radio systems. On IP networks, the technology, the equipment's there. My understanding that one of the big gaps is we don't have the tower locations, and that.
Yes.
And I didn't know if you had any problems procuring tower locations, because it appears that the Finance and Administration Cabinet have problems procuring such a relatively small piece of land on that. So have you had any experience with them or procuring those tower locations?
Well, actually, we're very fortunate we have one tower location that the county actually already owns. It's the end of a gravel road. It's up on a big hill, and there's a turnaround there, and there's actually room to put the one tower that we have to build. So we already have the location for it. And the other is when we would go across the river into West Virginia, it's a fire tower that's existing that was from a fire department over there. And so we can actually put our equipment on it. And I don't think there's going to be any cost other than us just building the equipment on the tower.
Okay. So that doesn't seem to be a problem.
That's not the problem at this point right now of getting a location for the towers that we need.
Okay. But it appears to me from at least the NextGen testimony we've had for 911, that's a problem for them getting their towers out in your areas right now. They can't procure them fast enough to support you with NextGen 911 is what I've been told. Have you run into that?
I have not heard that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. I think this is our last question. Representative Fugit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And knowing work as a trooper for 22 years, it's really important that you have communication back to dispatch. What's the total cost of the project?
Well, the project that we have projected right now that Motorola has given us, and that is the towers, the new radios for 30 radios for the officers, that's our road officers, and also new radios and repeaters in the cars. That's, like I said, repeaters at the towers. The complete system was it's 3 million. I can give you exact 3,020,700 and $3,020,779 is the exact number that they have give us, and they say this will. And I've got a map that shows what we have now, the coverage we have that their engineers has give us, and it's very faint. And then the coverage area of then, it's a darker area, and it covers about 98% is what they're saying.
As one more, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
As far as the tower locations, have you contacted like cell providers just to see if you could share space or buy space on their towers to that would fulfill the need until you could get the main tower built? Would that work? Are there towers available, like from cell phone providers, that you could be in negotiations with them or use their towers?
In this proposal, that is actually, they have contacted one cell phone tower that we will be leasing space from.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Well, we appreciate y'all coming and bringing this situation to us to look at. And let's go ahead and we will move straight on to our last presenters today. And Representative Burke, you might have to pull up a wing chair. It looks like there's 4 of y'all there. In case, just pull up one more chair, and you might have to share a mic. Not sure who all's coming up. All right, and if you would, you know the routine, but please make sure everyone introduces themselves for the record there, and make sure the green lights are on the microphone.
Good morning, and thank you so much for allowing me to join you today. Thank you to Chairs Girdler and Thomas and the members of the committee. I'm Representative Lindsay Burke from the 75th District in Lexington. Today I'm presenting to you House Bill 363, for which I can take absolutely no credit. It's a fabulous bill that's been around for many years. It's had great work by members of both parties. I just happen to be the person who's privileged to carry it at this moment. I really need to honor Representative Blanton, who's put a great deal of work into this bill. And I'm sorry he can't be with us at this moment, but he's done really excellent work to bring it. Kentucky's workers' comp system was created in 1914 with the goal of placing responsibility for workplace injuries on the industry in which such injuries occur. That's as opposed to putting that on the general public. So workers' comp plays an important role in protecting Kentucky workers when they are injured. Under our current law, only physical injuries are covered. So you must be physically injured or physically ill in order to receive any workers' compensation coverage. House Bill 363 creates a carve-out to this for psychological injuries experienced by first responders, defined as firefighters, EMTs, police, National Guard, and frontline social workers employed by the cabinet. Our first responders take great risks to provide services to the public when we're in crisis. They come to us at our worst moments. They see the absolute most awful things that any of us can imagine. They do it willingly, courageously, knowing that their lives are at risk. But beyond those life-risking situations, their psychological health is also at risk because we are broken people and they find us at our most broken. So in thinking about the kinds of effects that first responders experience as a result of their public service, we have to acknowledge the psychological injuries which devastate both our first responders and their families. Today, I'm joined by Matt Castor from USA Cares. I am also joined by Wendy and Kyle Johnson. Please introduce each of yourselves for the record.
Good morning.
My name is Wendy Johnson, and I am a spouse of a former Sergeant, Kyle Johnson, from the Kentucky National Guard, and he is the reason I'm here today.
Thank you.
And I'm Matt Castor. I'm Vice President at USA Cares. Kyle and Wendy are our clients, and anytime we have an opportunity to allow them to share their experience, their story, we certainly want to give them that opportunity. House Bill 363 fit well with their circumstance, and I'm very thankful to both of them for being here today. It takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there and to share what you're going through and to share some challenges. And so on behalf of USA Cares, I want to thank you both for being here and for doing this today.
Absolutely. And let Kyle introduce himself.
Kyle Johnson, former member of the Kentucky National Guard.
House Bill 363 is stepping in to a situation that no family should have to face. When first responders experience psychological injury, they're left with really no recourse. If you're at a regular job, let's say you work at a law office and you experience a psychological injury, well, that's probably not normal. But our first responders, because of the types of jobs they're doing for us, it's very predictable that they would experience PTSD. 6% of U.S. adults experience PTSD each year, but for our first responders, the rates are 3 to 5 times higher. That means that we know that it's very likely that they can be injured psychologically to the point of no longer being able to work, but beyond that, being no longer able to enjoy a quality of life. I'm going to ask for Wendy to talk to us about some of the experiences that she and her family have had as a result of the public service of Kyle.
I just wanted to say I'm probably going to read a lot from what I have written, just because it's been such a long journey for us. It's been 3.5 years that Kyle has been dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder, and 3 years that we actually knew that he was dealing with that. So thank you to each and every one of you on this committee for allowing us to be here today. Especially would like to thank Senator Deneen. I was watching a YouTube video of this type of meeting back in October of last year, and there was General Lamberton and Major Tim Olson were up here, and they were speaking about red tape that National Guard members have to go through if something like this happens. And when I watched that video, I pushed pause and I emailed him because I said, I just don't think what they're saying is being understood correctly. And with our experience over the past 3 years, people in the National Guard sometimes don't even understand what type of situation that Kyle is in right now. So thank you for your referral to Matt Castor. It was extremely helpful, and I'm hoping that it helps other first responders. The matter we bring before you today is a really sensitive topic for those it affects directly. We are here today to address the gap in coverage for and benefits for those who find themselves struggling with PTSD. As all of you know, this is a mostly invisible injury, an injury that affects the most important organ in your body. There are years of research on PTSD from the National Institute of Health to the VA and all in between. It is a real and devastating injury to receive. For the past 3.5 years, Kyle has been struggling with PTSD. The situation we find ourselves in has been devastating to us both and humiliating to him. He had been in the National Guard for 8 years when he received orders to go to Louisville for civil unrest when there were riots, when Breonna Taylor was shot and killed. In his own words, it was comparable to being in a third world country
right here in Kentucky. Right here. Not Afghanistan, not Iraq, not Kuwait. The events that took place over the course of the week that he was gone was apparent as I sit at home and watched live coverage of what was happening in Louisville. Fast forward to 6 months later, and Kyle was having panic attacks driving to his job sites where he ran his own construction company. He was having sleepless nights, and he had nightmares when he did sleep. And most of these things I was unaware of, because men don't bring those things home to their wives. They don't want to be looked at as weak. There was a turning point when I believe he was in psychosis from no sleep from PTSD. It's difficult to talk about the things we experienced in June of 2021. He had been working out of town for 3 weeks at that point, and he came home 4 a.m. one morning, got in bed. I got up at 7 that morning, and I was on vacation the week after that because it had been my birthday. Kyle comes outside and tells me he wants a divorce. And 3 weeks before he left, he was he was so successful with his business. I'm a respiratory therapist, and I was going to be able to go to like PRN status with my job. So as you can imagine, a divorce was nowhere on my radar. I reached out to his first sergeant, and I had never reached out to anyone in the military about him like that. But I reached out to his first sergeant and asked him to check on Kyle because he had left home, and I was worried about him. And he never checked on Kyle. From there, it was a 6-week wait to get an appointment with a psychiatrist. They diagnosed him with bipolar disorder, and the long process of trying different medications began. And I would like to add here that Kyle was unable to work. He was either in bed or he was on our couch. For 4 months, he barely left our house. And that was just to ride to the grocery store with me. He did not go in. I think it was 10 or 12 different psychotropic medications he tried. Then in October 2021, after he let the guard know what the psychiatrist had told him, they sent him to see behavioral health at Greenville, I think it was. There he was diagnosed with PTSD by Angie Green, who's the Army's behavioral health provider. She asked Kyle, "Do you think you have bipolar disorder?" And he said, "I don't know, but I can't explain why I have behaved the way that I have." We were instructed to file for workers' comp after they determined the type of orders that he was on, because there's a difference in state orders and there's a difference in federal orders. And that's where the confusion lies with the National Guard. 4 months later, if you can imagine SpongeBob at this point, 4 months later, we had to contact the Inspector General, which I should back up and say I did, because if it was up to Kyle, nobody would know what he was dealing with. He did not want anybody to know, because it's humiliating. But it is wrong what is happening to these men and women. So I called the Inspector General and I said, "Can you please help us?" So he did his best. We finally got a response from the workers' comp adjuster where Kyle had to speak to her for an hour or so on the phone. He had to spell out all the medications he was on. He had to spell out the word Kevlar, because that's what type of helmet that he was wearing, because she needed to know what kind of equipment he was wearing, what kind of situation he was in, what were you doing? Were people shooting at you? She hung up on him, and I called her back and I said, "What happened? Did he hang up on you?" She's like, "He's not a very good historian, and this is frustrating." And I said, "Thank you. Yes, ma'am. It is very frustrating. You should live with him." By this time, the Army had decided to discharge Kyle on January 20, 2022, with bipolar disorder. About a week later, he received the denial from workers' comp. We reached back out to the Inspector General for direction, and he said we would have to sue the state of Kentucky for damages due to law KRS 342.0011, and that he could not help us any further. So we contacted several attorneys, and no one would help us. I mean, nobody wants to sue a state government. I didn't even know if it was possible. After looking endlessly for help, we found the Board of Claims and filed a claim with them in October 2022. They encouraged us to find representation when the National Guard started filing motions to dismiss for Kyle's case. I'm doing this by myself because that is the only program that I could find that Kyle, who is not considered a veteran, even after 9 years in the National Guard, he is not considered a veteran to most of these programs. USA Cares helped us because Kyle was a first responder. I guess I'm also a first responder, being a respiratory therapist. Before I forget, I did want to read what the Inspector General told me on March 23rd, 2022. The Inspector General said, the only option would be to get an attorney and sue the state for damages because of their workers' comp laws. My advice would be to contact the governor's office, and I did, or your state representative, and I did. Point out the law. My points would be this. It's not an option if the governor orders you to state active duty. Therefore, all injuries, including mental, should be covered for guardsmen. It would be different if the mission was optional. Highly emotional riots pose a serious threat of bodily injury, and anytime there's a threat of bodily injury, there is elevated emotional and mental stress. When Kyle enlisted, he swore an oath to follow the orders of the President of the United States and the Governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, believing that if anything should happen to him, he would be taken care of. He has not been. Luckily, an attorney in Elizabethtown named Tyler Fleck recommended Joey Comley for Kyle. Joey jumped on board, and we are still waiting for the courts to make a decision. Joey told us to establish care with the VA. I called to establish care with them. We went to primary care in Gallatin, Tennessee, because we live right on the border south of Bowling Green. We spoke to a psychiatrist from Murfreesboro at that visit. They sent medication in the mail to Kyle, and we're going to set up appointments for Kyle to see that psychiatrist. Then she called and said, I'm sorry, it says Kyle doesn't qualify. We spoke to multiple people and got multiple answers. One of them being a lady telling me that she was surprised that primary care doctor that saw Kyle had not been reprimanded for seeing him because he was not qualified to come to the VA. Finally, a guy told us to call our local VA in Bowling Green to just set up with mental health. We went, we spoke to the therapist for an hour, made another appointment to see her again. Kyle was sitting at home on the computer for a Zoom meeting, and they canceled it, saying he didn't qualify again, only for humanitarian care. We just gave up. I mean, Kyle's frustrated, I'm frustrated. He's dealing with PTSD on top of all this stuff. So luckily, he continued to see his therapist, Amber, who donates her time through the Give an Hour program. Time passed, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer in October. As we were sitting at the oncologist's office, VA called and scheduled 2 appointments for Kyle. One was with the counselor, and one was to come in and get labs. So I give him my phone number because he doesn't answer his phone. He just doesn't have it in him to deal with people anymore. So I tell him, Kyle, we've got you 2 appointments scheduled. And he's like, okay, good. Thank goodness. You know, I'm sitting here with Cancer, 2 surgeries, 19 radiation treatments later. I'm okay today, thank God. But at that time, we were worried. He thought I was going to die. We got off the phone. I told him, you've got appointments. And as soon as I told him and he was excited, they immediately called me back and said, I am so sorry. We have to cancel those appointments. We can't provide care to him. I was off work for about 6 weeks during November to December, and that's when I saw the YouTube video with Senator Deneen. He called Matt Castor from USA Cares for us, and they have been the only organization that has helped us financially, along with my dad, my coworkers, and my employer, the Critical Access Hospital that I work at in Tennessee. It's not even in Kentucky. So my insurance is taking care of Kyle because of what happened to him from Kentucky's National Guard. There's massive confusion regarding National Guard soldiers on state active duty orders versus federal, and following laws when it comes to discharging them with PTSD versus personality disorders. According to the DOD, if a soldier has been deployed, say to Afghanistan or Iraq, they cannot be discharged with a personality disorder if there's a chance they might have PTSD. That has to be evaluated. That has to be given a second opinion before they can end their career, which is exactly what happened to Kyle with a bipolar disorder when he was clearly suffering from PTSD, and that's documented by the National Guard's Army Behavioral Health Provider. There's lots of finger pointing and blackballing these soldiers who step up and ask for help. That is reality. Kyle waited for 9 years to deploy with his unit, which would have given him veteran status. But instead, he is here today, thank God, but he's alone. He doesn't have that camaraderie that he had with his unit, with the 623rd out of Glasgow, Kentucky. I do believe I'm not sure if I can say where they are, but they're deployed. All his buddies, all his pals, all his friends, the ones that he had the most stability with for the past 9 years, they're gone and he is here. Some of them are dealing with PTSD, but won't admit it because they see what happened to Kyle. He was on the phone talking to one of them, and he was at a gas station getting gas when a car ran over a water bottle and it popped. This guy jumped in his truck thinking that he was hearing gunshots. But do you think he's going to stand up and say something? No, because this is what happens when you speak up. You know, there's a stigma for mental health in men especially. But I think it's important for me to also say, in my job as a respiratory therapist, a lot of times I see trauma that comes in that hospital. And there were days where I worried that when I came home, I would find my husband with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. So you can imagine my dismay when a patient came in his age with a gunshot wound to his head and his brains were coming out. All I could see was Kyle's face. So not only does PTSD affect him, it also affects me. I've been a respiratory therapist for 15 years. Things like that have never bothered me. I've held dead babies. I've done CPR on people who have died, who've had their skulls cracked. I don't get bothered by that. But what I did get bothered by was seeing that young man there who had chose to end his life for whatever reason, and all I could see was my husband. I should probably just cut it short. There's a few more things I'd like to say, but I think that's probably enough.
Wendy, thank you for coming here today and sharing some of your journey as a family to get justice for your husband so that he can receive the treatment he needs. One of the things I hope that we can highlight is the inconsistent treatment of our first responders. So just with the National Guard, if you're on a federal assignment and something like this would happen to you, you'll be taken care of by the federal government. They will provide financial support for you. But if you're on a state assignment, you don't have that same privilege. And the state of Kentucky isn't abandoning these people who are laying their lives on the line for us. That's simply wrong. We can do so much better. We have the same patchwork problem among our police entities. So KSP has one way of dealing with this. Local police stations and departments have different ways of dealing with this. And the lack of consistency is problematic. We know we're already having trouble recruiting people to be in these really challenging jobs. And part of the reason we can't do that is because we can't promise them they'll be all right at the end of it. So we need to do better. I'd also like to turn now to Matt Castor from USA Cares. He's going to be able to speak to us about this particular situation, but also give us some high-level, overarching themes that he observes through his work. Matt?
Thank you, Representative. So one of the things I was interested in learning about when going through this process and speaking to Wendy and Kyle was just how often this is occurring within our organization. So looking back at the history of applicants and claims from 2022, 2023, and so far in 2024. So on average, what we're seeing is looking at 2022, the National Guard requests that came in dealt about 17% were diagnosed with PTSD, 11% were homeless, and then we go into 2023 and there's a shift, and we go from 17% PTSD to 37% PTSD, and we go from 11% homeless to 30% homeless for roughly the same number of applicants. And the interesting thing to me is you read studies about people who are experiencing PTSD. They are more likely to become homeless because they have a harder time hanging on to a job. Once they've become homeless, their PTSD is exacerbated to a level where it becomes difficult to recover, bringing on difficult options. One of our goals is always to try to be on the forefront, try to be more on the preventative end than the reactionary end. So looking at just the nuts and bolts, the cost of dealing with these scenarios. In most cases, if we deal with it on the front end, we deal with it for a fraction of the cost of on the back end. A recent study done in Louisville by the Coalition for the Homeless details the cost to Louisville for each homeless person on the street. And they identified that it's roughly $27,000 per person with all the city services being offered to provide care for a homeless person. Because of the high risk of them at some point becoming incarcerated, once they are homeless, at that point, the cost doubles to more than $50,000 per person. It's my hope that we can continue to share these stories and continue to have conversations around. I don't know what the perfect answer is. But whenever our clients want to share their stories, I certainly want to give them the opportunity to do that. This is a challenging problem. This is a tough position for these families. But we will stand by you guys. We'll continue to help in any way we can. Senator Deneen, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We certainly appreciate that, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We're nearly finished. In preparing for this presentation, I spoke with families of Kentucky State Police troopers, EMS, National Guardsmen, and social workers who've experienced the catastrophic effects of post-traumatic stress disorder and found our safety net of workers' comp to be deficient. The bill enjoys the support of the Fraternal Order of Police, USA Cares, National Guard Association of Kentucky, National Association of Social Workers, Kentucky Chapter, and others. And there's one more family that Wendy introduced me to that I'd like to welcome to the table. Treadway family, would you please come join us?
I'd like to introduce Christy and Kayleen Treadway. Christy is the wife of an EMS provider, and did you also do that?
Yes.
She also has served as a first responder doing EMS work. Kayleen is their daughter, and I've invited them because they shared their family story with me. I felt it was too compelling not to give them the opportunity to share with you what they have been through. So if you would, please state your name for the record, and please try and keep it brief.
Good afternoon. My name is Christy Treadway. My husband is Bobby Treadway, and we have 3 girls. Our journey began in 2015. So here, this part stack is 2,418 pages of medical documentation. The bag that my daughter carried up is legal documentation from lawyers. We have fought since 2016. So keeping it very brief, September 2015, our day started out like any other day. Given Kayleen was roughly 9 to 10 years old, so she was elementary school. Our middle daughter was middle school, and our oldest in college. So on those days, Bobby would normally, when he was on shift at Bath County EMS, he would normally take the kids, drop them off at school, things like that. He was the breadwinner for our family, and I done personal in-home care, and I worked through Gateway Area Development District, and I do their waiver program. So our day started out, and later I get a call. Bobby has been out on a call, and a vehicle has been over an embankment upside down, probably wrecked sometime in the wee morning hours, and it's well after lunchtime that someone has drove by and noticed that this vehicle is over the embankment. As Bobby is called and dispatched to that scene, he calls for a medical helicopter, so on and so forth. It's a long extrication. In the process of all of this, my husband collapsed and becomes unresponsive, but breathing. He goes into a state of shock. They are now calling for a second transport of an ambulance to render care for him. He is having to be placed in a Stokes basket, hoist up an embankment, and receive medical attention himself when he was one called to give medical attention. So through the course of all of this, and not being able to return to work, I started having seizures. First one thing and another, through testing and things, no epilepsy was found. So much easier if the diagnosis had have been epileptic seizures. But they're not. There are seizures due to diagnosis of PTSD. So with that being said, I have fought for like 9 years. There is several names that I see here that you might recognize our names because I have sent out numerous emails through the course of the years for bills like this that have come to the floor and being presented for change to happen. So you don't have to verbally answer or anything, but I have a question. Have you personally called 911? And if you have done so, and in doing so, you expected someone to come to your aid. You expected someone to be there. Just as my husband has worked and provided and cared for our community, maybe your community. And in the time of need, we expected services for our family. We expected for a system that he had paid into, been a part of, to render aid back to us. When we reached out to that system shut us down. There is no benefits. because you have no physical injury. We contacted disability. The first week in the hospital, 32 seizures. I had a nurse to come in and say, you might want to consider talking to some social workers and start the process of filing for disability. Wow, that was really a hard kicker. Why would my husband need to file for disability? Also true, and in doing so, but there is not a physical injury. He goes to therapy every week. He has a PTSD therapist. He travels a little over 50 miles. We live in rural area, Bath County. We live in Sharpsburg. He travels to Lexington every week to see a therapist. And yes, that has helped tremendously. But how do you hold down a job when you have to take off weekly, more sometimes than a week, because you have other doctor's appointments? You have to have someone who's going to provide your medication. So you have to have follow-ups there with medication, then your therapy appointments. It's just a never-ending cycle. It's a consistent struggle. And my husband has worked and paid into the system. And then when we needed the system has failed us. So I am here and urging that there needs to be a change in the system so that families like myself and the Johnsons do not have to go through these waters. I thank you for your time today. My daughter, Kayleen, would like to say a few words.
Hello, my name is Kayleen Treadway, and I'm the youngest daughter of Bobby and Christy. As I have thought about what to say as I stand before you today, I was at a loss of words. There will never be enough words or feelings to express what my family and especially what my dad has been through. As hard as it is to stand here and replay every episode, every seizure, or every hospital visit in my head that my father has had, it needs to be shared and heard. It needs to be known that there needs and has to be a change in the broken system. I have waited 8 years to say what I needed to say. In those 8 years, I've wanted to scream, and I've cried, and I've been down on my knees praying that something would give, hoping that something would change. My dad has dedicated his life to saving others and sacrificing his own life and his time with his family so others would get the opportunity to make it back to their loved ones. No one will ever really know what my dad has seen on these runs or calls or what any of these first responders see on a daily basis. When they get to come back home, they keep what they see and hear bottled up so they can protect their own families, knowing that it just hurts them more and has a long-term effect on them and their loved ones. I have been diagnosed with PTSD myself from seeing my dad's seizures. I have my own nightmares and recalls of the times he has seized. I can stand here and tell you every time he has had a seizure. I can tell you where they were. I can tell you how long they were. And I can even tell you how we rearranged the living room so the stretcher would fit in the house to carry him out. I can tell you how many paramedics arrived on scene. And I can tell you exactly which family members were waiting at the hospital for us when he went unresponsive. I can tell you, down to the very last detail, about the night my mom screamed my name because my dad had collapsed on their bedroom floor and stopped breathing while he was seizing. I can tell you which family member came to the house to hold me while I screamed and cried because I thought I lost my dad that night. I can still see in my mind how purple his face got and how still he laid for a few moments until we got him breathing again. That seizure lasted 26 minutes, if you were wondering. I could go on and on about the seizures he has had, as I remember every single one of them down to the very first one he ever had. We were watching the Super Bowl, and I heard a loud sound coming from his chair. And as the little girl I was when I looked over and saw the state that my daddy was in, I was terrified, and I didn't know what was going on. He had had 32 seizures within that first week. I will never forget the times I've walked to his hospital room that he stayed in for weeks at a time and had been stopped at the door and reminded that I can't be loud or I'll scare him and he'll cease. The image of all the wires and monitors and cameras that were hooked to his head and his chest will never leave my mind. One night, when I was a little girl, I got scared, and my dad comforted me and let me lay with him and my mom in their bed. But that soon ended as he started to seize. I had my head laid in the bend of his arm, and I will never forget the feeling of his arm wrapping around my neck as I tried to get my mom's attention to help me get loose. We all want to be strong for our families and be helpful, but sometimes that seems impossible when they tell you they don't remember you. There are countless times my dad has forgotten who me or my mom were after his seizure, as well as forgetting where he was. Ever since 2015, my family has never been the same. We will never go out into public the same because he can't handle big crowds. He'll tense up, and I know something's wrong when his left arm starts jerking and his eye starts twitching. We will never watch the same TV shows or movies because they bring back memories. We can't just walk up to him to ask him a question or talk in case he doesn't hear us first. I have to stand at least 2 feet away from my own father while he's in his chair sleeping and call his phone to wake him up so that I don't scare him. My dad will never experience life the same. The life that he loved and enjoyed every moment of. Not being able to work has hurt my dad and has made him feel like a failure to his family. Ever since he was a 12-year-old boy, he has wanted and has dedicated his life to helping and saving others. He has been working for the system that has turned on him when he needed it the most, when he thought he could rely on it. I can hear my mom crying some nights, being so stressed with money, and she's the only one with an income. And I can see how stressed they both get when we're at the grocery store and they have to use several different carts because we don't have enough money to get what we need. Or how, like, we're in a restaurant, even like McDonald's, and we don't have enough money in the bank. So we have to dig for cash and change. My dad has always tried his absolute hardest to do everything he can for my family, and always making sure we are happy, even when it means he isn't. My dad needed the support back that he gave to help his community, and anyone around him, but the system failed him. I pray that changes are made for the families facing the same situation. I pray that something changes. That PTSD is a mental disability and it needs to be recognized. There are so many people that are hurt and affected by this terrible disability, and they need all the help that they can get. We need to help the ones who give their lives to help us. I beg you to please consider what I've shared and take it to heart that we need a change. I wouldn't wish any of the nightmares, seizures, hospital trips and bills, anger outbursts where I don't even recognize my own father, and the fear or financial struggles on anyone that my family has dealt with the past 8 years. I hope and pray that as I've opened up and shared my story, that even if it's too late for a change for my family, that a change is made in time for someone else's family. And thank you for your time, and thank you for listening.
These are just a couple of many stories just like this. Families whose loved ones have sacrificed their well-being so that when we call 911, we get the help we need. So that when our city's in crisis and the governor sends the National Guard, we can find peace. We need to honor their sacrifices by creating an extremely limited carve-out for psychological injuries for these people who have sacrificed so much for us. We can be the General Assembly that does that. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. Thank you for doing this during June, which is PTSD Awareness Month. I hope that many of you will consider being co-sponsors as we go into the next session, because this is a travesty that we can fix and something we can be truly proud to do for the people who serve us. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all for y'all's presentation, and definitely heart moving there. We only have about 15 minutes. As you see, we're losing a few members. We do. There's a 1 o'clock meeting that many might be involved with also. Representative Wesley, let's try to keep our questions kind of brief there. And I think a few of the presenters have sat back down, but if they need to come back up, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to make a comment. First, Representative, thank you for bringing this bill. Treadway family, we love you, appreciate you. We are sorry for what you went through. But I would like to address the young man back in the back, Kyle. I want all of us to just imagine that all of us signed up, regardless what branch of military you are serving in or wanting to serve in or that you have served in. We all take the same oath. But the National Guard, when they take an oath, their oath is the same as the branch of the military of Army, Air Force, Marines, Navy. But there's a couple words added in to the National Guard. And that is for the state of Kentucky. And they're going to swear that they're going to uphold and serve the governor. So their oath is the same as anybody else that has served as a veteran at that time, if they have served, or if they are on active duty now. They have took the same oath. And I said that to say this, Mr. Chairman, that if a National Guardsman that has took that same oath, if they're not deployed, they're not considered a veteran, and I think that's wrong. They serve in so many different ways. Not that they just don't serve the Commonwealth of Kentucky, but we have troops over there in Afghanistan that is serving in the National Guard. We have people in Jordan as of today. We have people serving all over the world that is from the Commonwealth of Kentucky as a National Guardsman. Now, I want you to imagine that everybody in this room, you have raised your right hand, you took this oath, and I want you to imagine that Mr. Chairman is our CO today. He is our commanding officer. He is the one that will pick and choose who will be deployed and go into other parts of this world. That is not our decision. Would you agree with me? And so I would like to say that young man back in the back, Kyle, that he's, to me, he's a veteran. And a lot of people today, because they have not been deployed overseas and been shot at, then they have been refused of being called a veteran. And I would like to say to him, and not only to his wife, we want to thank you for coming here and testifying today, along with the Treadway family, because they have interceded not only for our National Guards, but all of our military and all of our first responders. And I want to thank all of you today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your time.
All right, Representative Hart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I served 9 years in the National Guard. I've served over 30 years as a fire officer and a paramedic. So I can relate to a lot of what's being told, but I have one, hopefully an easy question. There are 23 states with some type of presumption for workers' compensation for mental health for firefighters. I don't know if that includes police and EMS in them states, but I do know includes firefighters. Is there any states, if any, or do you know how many states would have some type or similar law that would apply to National Guard soldiers?
I do believe it's a similar number. Kentucky is an outlier that we're not providing care for our National Guardsmen who are on state deployment.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we are ticking close on time, so appreciate the quick questions there. Representative Grossberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I promise to be as brief as I can. First, I wanted to echo the sentiments of Representative Wesley that 100% that anyone who serves in the National Guard should be treated as a veteran whether or not they're deployed. They go through the same basic combat training as those who are in the regular Army, and quite often things that happen during training itself can be highly traumatic. When I was at Fort Jackson, there were several suicides, one of which was an attempted suicide, which haunts me to this day. A young lady took her safety razor, removed the plastic components, and cut herself viciously. And as a member of the Army, I am considered a veteran, but if someone was a member of the National Guard and bore the burden of witnessing that and had never been deployed, they wouldn't receive the same benefits. So thank you, Representative Wesley, for bringing up National Guard. The second, I want it stated in the record that 23 states already have the presumption for first responders for mental health. My final statement is I hope that this bill is expanded to include those who work in the call centers, either the 911 dispatchers or in the cases of 988, I think a 988 dispatcher or person should be included as well. The first point of contact often receives some of the most trauma. These people get phone calls where small children are describing sexual assault that just took place to them, describing seeing a dead parent or nearly dead parent, as might be the case with the young lady here. If she called 911, someone took that call and would be traumatized. And I remember on September 11th and soon after hearing those 911 dispatches where they stayed on the phone with people who were stuck in the towers, unable to escape, and counseled them without adequate training through their final moments as they burned to death or as the building collapsed on top of them. And those people, many of whom never could go back to work, didn't receive the same benefits, but they are frontline workers. And from my quick checking, they, according to this current version, are not recognized as such, but I hope we can remedy that because they suffer the same invisible traumas that can haunt them for the rest of their lives. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Tackett-Lafferty.
Thank you. I want to first say thank you for bringing this bill. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe over a decade ago, we removed what was called the impact rule when it comes to things such as torts. In torts law, negligent infliction of emotional distress. So here in Kentucky, we've recognized that if a mother is driving down the highway with her child in the vehicle and is struck by a drunk driver, then she doesn't also have to be injured in order to collect for emotional distress by seeing her child critically injured or even its fatal injuries. We've recognized that across Kentucky at this point. And I'd just like to put this into perspective. A little over maybe about 2 years ago, this committee was kind enough to let me honor the first responders in my community when we lost 3 police officers to an ambush shooting. And for instance, using those officers as an example, we have a very brave young officer with a young family who lost his leg below the knee. And fortunately, according to our current law, he would be entitled to collect psychological benefits in that situation. However, all of the other officers who were subjected to the same atmosphere, the same danger, who responded, went to the danger, and attempted to, collect their injured partners and collect their partners that they had worked with all of their lives who were fatally injured in that crisis, they would not be eligible to receive benefits for that same incident. So I really appreciate you bringing this to the attention of the committee today, and I think it's very important that we take a serious look at this. Thank you.
All right, we have time for two more, and we have 5 minutes. Senator Deneen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank our presenters today. Thank you for bringing this forward. As I've spoken on in the past, it is our job to look for ways to reduce the red tape that is holding back services to those that have provided us invaluable services. And that goes beyond just the National Guardsmen, but it also reaches into our reservist members and to those first responders. So I want to thank the Johnson family, the Treadway family, and I really want to share my gratitude to the General Assembly for funding USA Cares. It's the first time that we have put money into that organization that takes care of these situations like this and addresses areas that we may have lapses in our policies. So I want to thank Matt Castor and USA Cares for their outreach to this family. I look forward to working with my colleagues in the upcoming session as we look for ways to remedy some of these shortfalls in our policies. So thank you for bringing this forward.
All right, we have time for one more. Representative Stalker, you get to close this out there.
Thank you so much, Chairman. I want to first thank Representative Burke for filing this bill and having the opportunity to present it today. And I want to thank the Johnson family as well as the Treadway family for being here. And oftentimes, unfortunately, individuals in your situations have to re-traumatize yourself by telling your stories just so that you can get the help. And that is a difficult thing to do, but it is an incredibly brave thing to do. I do not think that vulnerability is a sign of weakness. I do not think that individuals should feel humiliated by their circumstances. The work that your families do is important to our communities, and we need to be able to reciprocate and take care of you in your time of need. I will be in support of this bill when I know Rep. Burke will be filing it in the 2025 year. And I will encourage and remind the colleagues that are still here that we have an immense amount of power here and that we can make the changes that are needed anytime we wish to do that. The 100 members that serve in the House as well as the individuals in the Senate, and I would highly encourage this to be a priority for all of the members in this upcoming legislative year. Thank you.
All right. Well, that concludes everything. We appreciate y'all being here. The next meeting. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, great. We saw you come in, so I told them. So thank you, Representative Maddox. The next meeting is July 30th, 11 o'clock. My co-chair, Girdler, will be conducting that meeting. And if there is no other business, we stand adjourned.